What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to celebrate Scream 5 turning 2 years old by doing a kind of re-review. I just kind of want to talk about my newest thoughts on the movie. I rewatched it about a week ago. We did a whole live stream, too, where I kind of just took any topics or questions that the audience that you guys gave, and we kind of went off. And this one, this is going to be a shorter-ish thing than the live stream, and I'm just going to kind of rattle off what I think of this movie now. It has evolved. It has changed, and, a thing that I have said before, I'll say this. Every time I watch this movie, I like it more. And I would say that still right now. As time goes, I tend to drop it on my rankings, and normally I put this kind of at the very bottom. Scream 3 and this kind of alternate. But every time I watch this movie, I think, you know what? This is really good. It is held back. There are definitely some big issues with this movie, but overall, it's a good time. It feels good. I always enjoy it. And it really... Specifically, I would say even this movie, maybe even Scream 3, when you watch them, you realize, oh, there is no bad Scream movie. Now, I know that's not true for everybody. I know Scream 5 and 6, for a lot of people, they absolutely hate it, right? These are not movies that they like, and it kind of stopped with Wes and stopped with 4. I don't agree. I've never really agreed. I still love 6. I still really, really like 5. But I get it. There's different fans of different preferences. But so with this movie, let's just kind of talk about, different things. One thing is, and I mentioned this in the live stream, is Chad. That I kind of, when I rewatch this is like my 4th, 5th time doing this, I try to focus on different things each time. Or at least things kind of stand out to me each time that didn't stand out the time before. This one specifically, I gotta be real, Chad stood out. Now, he's almost not in the movie at all, and I think that's a huge issue. And that still, to this day, a big issue with this movie is the lack of Chad, Mindy, Amber, Liv, really those 4, right? Wes killed off, I think, prematurely. Those issues still are there. Chad is just not in the movie enough. But more than ever before watching it, I realized, oh, he's super good. He's very charismatic. He's just, beaming with, energy. And I could see when they maybe did test screenings or whatever, and they do that, and they say, you know what, we got something there. And I don't know whose idea was to put him with Tara, in the next one. That worked. I think that was a really good decision. But they never worked off each other. They were in the one scene together at the hospital. But beyond that, they didn't talk. They didn't do a single freaking thing together. He talked about her, at the bar. But so to put those two together really came out of left field to me, I guess, thinking about it now. But he's really good. He has a lot of energy. He's just not in it enough. But every scene he's in, even with the Liv scenes, he's very, very good. And he definitely stands out. Jenna as Tara, she stands out. Now, you always have to kind of remind yourself, oh, she's just not in this movie all that much too, right? Tara is another one. And when she is in this movie, she's normally crippled, because of the opening. But, the opening is so good. And yeah, it's held back from recreating 1, but again, I think time is almost its ally, because you rewatch it and Scream 1's opening is timeless. And yes, this is copying it, and in a lot of ways it's similar, but it's still also kind of timeless, where you could watch it and just the cat and mouse game that's going back and forth and constant movement. There's no chases, right? But she is moving around and the conversation is moving forward. And once they introduce the game and, stab trivia, it's extremely good. I really enjoy it. It's only when you start to rank it against the other ones. But again, I think it's another reminder that, oh yeah, this movie's really good. There's no bad or you could say worst Scream movie, but there's no terrible Scream movie. They're all extremely good. The opening of this movie is awesome. I always like to throw in how I feel about Sam, right? So Sam and Melissa Barrera, I was pretty harsh on her. And I think the internet was also pretty harsh on her. I've definitely warmed up to her, and obviously she was phenomenal in 6, and she won me over. I've declared that I was sorry and that she's definitely taken steps to improve, and I think she's a really good actress and awesome as Sam in 6. 5, you definitely see it. You can see the potential there. I think we all kind of could, right? The 3rd act, she's very good. She is good throughout, but she has kind of pockets of time where it's just not strong enough. And again, looking back at it now, I don't think she holds back the movie. The weaknesses, like I said, the movie's always going to be divisive because of Dewey, right? That's always going to be a problem. Some of the pacing, the deaths, they are pretty kind of one and done. Wes's is, the tension that's just, you open something, you close something, you do that 4 or 5 times, and then he dies, right? Judy's, it's very quick. I like Judy's death overall in terms of the throwing her off her game, not killing her in broad daylight, right? But you just think of all the deaths, and yeah, they're very short. They're not super creative. Like, that's a weakness. Again, hiding people. Like, you could think it's Amber. I think we all thought it was Amber, but like, she's just not in the movie all that much. Hiding Liv and killing Vince in the way that they did, and just introducing, like, those are the weaknesses. I would say now, looking back at it now, the pacing, some of that stuff. You could argue the motive. I've actually warmed up to the motive as time has gone on. You could argue a weakness of this movie is just very much replicating Scream 1, taking it literally back to Stu's house, all that jazz. Like, those to me are the complaints. I've honestly moved off of, because I think I said, and I would stand by it back then. I wouldn't stand by it now. I think Sam was, at least watching it for the first time, she just wasn't strong enough. Maybe like it's the new age factor. Maybe it's because like I like her more now than I did then. I know the actress that she is now. She was able to win me over in Scream 6 now versus, just seeing her in this one. There are some things that aid her now that you couldn't have done back then. But watching it now, I think, it's fine. She's not a massive weak, or she's actually not a weakness at all of this movie. Maybe a slightly, if you're thinking like, okay, well, Sydney normally leads this. Is she as strong as Sydney, saying like a Scream 3 or even like a Scream 1? No, but, Sydney was kind of weaker in Scream 4. She was excellent, as it went on towards the end, but, she's kind of in and out in Scream 4. So is she the worst main lead that they've ever, portrayed? Not necessarily. Maybe she's tied, maybe a little bit better, a little bit worse, but she doesn't hold this movie back. Of course, like I said, the Dewey thing, like, and it's tough, because the movie does need to have stakes. And like, I agree with Amber and Richie, at the end. And like I said, even the motive I've kind of warmed up to. They had to do something. Like, bringing this movie out and bringing everybody back. You do have to make it impactful. And you can't just keep letting all these people, like, some of them you have to. Or like a Sydney character, you can, in my opinion, you can never kill her off, right? Eventually, a Gale or a Dewey probably does have to go. I think, for me personally, I have been more okay with killing him in 5 than I think a lot of people. My main issue, I guess, is how they treated 6. I think 6 has actually hurt it, if that so in 6, you didn't kill anybody. There was really no stakes. Commonly, people say now, right? Like, if you eliminate 6, you don't really eliminate, anything. Like, nothing of value was lost, because everybody lives. You bring back Kirby, but then she also lives. So, like, nothing really changes, right? Like, the new people died, new Ghostface and stuff like that. So I think that hurts 5, because you decided to go after a legacy character, a fan favorite, and then your next movie, you did absolutely nothing, including your own cast, including your own core 4. And that is probably the biggest problem with not killing Chad and Mindy in 6. So, again, if we're just looking at 5, and if I'm just rewatching 5 and trying to live the experience of 5, I actually don't mind it, because, like, something like that needed to happen. And, yeah, you could maybe swap it out with something else, but what do you want to swap it out for, right? Do you want to swap it out with Gale? I think it's just the mentality that they had as writers and directors and creatives afterwards. I think that's retroactively hurt 5 because of what they did. Also, the Amber thing, right? The fact that it is Amber that kills Dewey, and, the height difference and the strength, like, yeah, they are putting it at the forefront more than most times. But, as I commonly say, like, you think of, like, Charlie and 4, like, these people, he's not throwing around Olivia like that. That guy weighs, like, 85 pounds, right? Like, it's not going to happen. So, are there times where they over-exaggerate? Yeah. Did Radio Silence lean into it too much? Absolutely. And they kind of got cocky, and they even did like the Quinn thing, with Gale's boyfriend in 6, almost as like a, an FU to the people pointing that stuff out. I'm not a fan of that, right? Like, if you want to be unrealistic from time, every now and then, that's okay. Don't highlight it. Don't make it like a thing. And that's literally what they've done. And, again, granted, they made it a thing by, if you kill a legacy character like that, like Dewey, you're going to have all eyes on it kind of forever. And you need to kind of know that, where that death needs to be about as perfect as it can. And I think, to me, like, the scene's awesome. Like, he knows the rules. He knows what he has to do. He gets caught off guard. He doesn't lose in, like, a straight-up fight. In fact, he wins in a straight-up fight. It's got a lot of elements you'd absolutely want, right? It doesn't have a cheap death in the way that he loses the, if he was fighting Amber in the first part of that and he just dies, that would be a big problem. But I think they knew that. And I think, they scripted it like that. You could say, why is the hospital, that's another thing. Why is the hospital? Why are they doing the hospital? Cliche again. There's things like that you can focus on. But the specific Dewey scene, I've honestly never had too big of a problem with it, except for, the size and all that kind of stuff. But, eventually, like I said, it's happened before. They've made it a bigger deal than it needs to be, and they focused on it more. And that's their fault. That's their problem. But it is kind of what it is, right? The final act, I love the final act. Amber and Richie, their monologue. When the movie came out, and so I don't think I'm a toxic fan, but I am, a content creator. We've talked about Scream so much. I talk about other things, and so when people do talk about, toxic things, like sometimes I think, okay, well, who are they talking about? Because we're all kind of online, we're all kind of listening. As time has gone on, I've kind of accepted the monologue more and more, and I actually do think it's quite timely, and it actually, how Scream 4 was kind of like 10 years ahead of the curve, right? For fame and online presence, like that kind of stuff. It was way ahead. I have no idea, how that was, how they came up with that so long ago. When it comes to 5, it didn't see so far ahead like 4 did, so I think people maybe held that against it. But one thing that's definitely helped is all of the stuff that's happened with 5, with 6, the split fandom, and just all the stuff that we've actually talked about too on the channel. I think that speech, that monologue, I think it's actually held up quite well. And the way I look at it, I said this in the live stream too, but I want to say it here. The way I look at it is I don't get the sense that they're going after fans, because there's too many mentions in this movie of self-awareness. Even Mindy's speech, sometimes she's attacking fans, like the script itself, is going after online fans. But it also, I think, is self-aware to the point that it knows that fans are the reason that, number one, movies exist, but this Scream specifically exists. You can see that, I think, in Mindy's speech, where, she talks about, people won't stand it, and, online they freak out and all that stuff. That's a little attack heavy, but it's balanced by, people won't put up with just jumping a new movie and they forget about the legacy cast. They're going after at least how I read it, they're going after movies that do that, and it's been proven a lot of that stuff does not work, right? So they know, they're aware. So when you look at the monologue at the end, you have to, I think, apply it to the movie itself, right? Where these are people that are unhinged. These are people that the basis is fine. The basis is, these mean a lot to people. These movies mean a lot to people, the franchise and all that stuff, and they just want good products, right? They've had a lot of terrible stuff, up until this point. Now, the unhinged part is, well, we're going to go kill people to write the movie so that Hollywood can, get its act together, right? And it's that is the over the top. That's the movie. That's you have to have a little fiction there, right? So that's how I personally read it. It has worked out where some fans are literally toxic, and we've seen the community be split and people attack each other and all that stuff. And I mention it because I think it's fun. I don't take it too seriously. Also, I've never really been in the spotlight of these attacks, so I don't really care. But you have all that. That is true. That is definitely they did almost see that coming, in a way. But I also don't look at it as a major attack against us, the Scream fandom, because ultimately I think it's aware where these movies exist because of us. These movies are it means something to us. These people go to conventions, the Nevs and all them of the world. They go to conventions, they know that it means something to people. I don't think that's a dig. And if it is a dig, these people should be, cast off, because that's not right. But I really don't think that part's a dig. And once I kind of see it through that lens, I really have no issue, with the monologue, the set, the fights themselves. I love, I've always kind of splitting them up, and, Sam handles Richie and Gail and Sydney handle Amber, and, the hand sanitizer, again, her saying it and lighting her on fire. There's a lot of good moments. Like I said, the Dewey Hospital thing, there's a lot of really good scenes there. Some of the conversations they have. I actually have warmed up more to Sam telling the story of her family history. There's a lot in this movie that's very good. Again, those issues, those pockets. There's pockets. Killing Wes, Wes and Judy just seemed like they didn't really fit, and Wes seemed like he was inserted just to kill him, just so you could do a for Wes thing for the party. They did some stupid stuff with time jumps of, they leave Judy and Wes's house and it's daytime, and then it's midnight at night when Tara gets attacked. Things like that. Again, some of the ways they planned out some of the deaths. And I guess the originality, right? Like that was a big issue. And that's why I appreciate, not to make it about 6 because I really want to keep it on 5, but that's why I still always love, even right now, I still love 6 because 6 has so many problems. Okay, it does, and I've talked about probably all of them. But the thing with 6 is 5 was a safe movie that I think I can appreciate more that time has gone on. I think I can say, you know what, it was safe. It's not reinventing the wheel, but it feels kind of like homey. Like you can all kind of like cuddle up with it and watch it and feel good. Well, at times, right? Like there's times where you're not going to feel good about this movie, but overall it's like, okay, they did what they needed to do. They made a Wes Craven-like film, and they made some mistakes, and it was safe at some times or repetitive, in elements and stuff. Maybe it was a little Star Wars Episode 7 to Star Wars Episode 4 like, right? Where they were not taking, but killing Dewey is a big risk. And you could argue that didn't really work out for them. That's definitely valid, but they did take some big risks, right? And then 6, they went off the deep end. They did the 3 ghost faces. Ghostface kills a ghost face. Just bring it to a different location, right? So many different things they tried in 6, and I think a lot of those actually kind of worked. And that's why I've always liked it, because 5 was the movie it needed to be. And 6 was because you couldn't repeat 5 again, right? Everybody was saying, all right, you made your Wes Craven Scream movie, now make something different. And that's exactly what they did. Yeah, you can judge it for sure, but like on that basis, I think that's completely fine. I think they knew what they needed to do with 5. They replicated 4, they replicated 1, they did what they needed to do. And I think overall it's a very good movie, and I struggle like ranking, like again, I'm serious. After watching it, I think, oh man, because like Scream 3 has some of my favorite moments in the entire franchise. Like the ending, the third act of Scream 3 is like legendary, and I could just watch that on repeat. But there's a lot of really weak elements, I think, with Scream 3. Scream 5, when I am not watching it, like if you ask me 6 months from now, I might say, yeah, 5 is a little weak. But then when I watch 5, I'm like, oh man, I kind of like it. Like I don't know if it's my least favorite Scream movie. It's got to be between that and 3, and I just don't know which. Because I think 5, seeing Sydney again, like that's something very special that you don't get in 6. I don't know if I missed her while watching 6, but like watching 5 after 6, there's something she brings. Like all the scenes she's in are awesome. The phone call with her, I'm always gonna, I almost like kind of forgot about how the phone call went, because like watching it again, it's like, oh yeah, like it's short but sweet. She's tired of it. She's just shooting all the doors. Like she's an epic character that is just so like kind of powerful in 5, and like unapologetically so, right? Like it's really good. And the final thing I guess I want to say, I'm trying to think of like all these elements that I might have missed. The music. This is something that I've tried to focus on, I think, a little bit more this time than any other times. A lot of the themes, so like Dewey's theme, Sydney's theme when she walks. Stu's house is not great, and I think that like ages pretty poorly. The fact that it very much looks like it's just on a set. It's not like a real house on real land or anything. That stands out. But when Sydney, like when it's on her, and she's inside the house and she's looking around, and it's her music, it's a very iconic, kind of soundtrack, like chills. Like it's so, and I think I noticed it before, but I really try to like listen for these things now. And the music in general, like I said, the tension sometimes isn't done all that great. Like the Wes death hasn't aged all that well. Like his actual death, getting stabbed in the throat, is pretty cool, but how they got there, I think, continues to age kind of weakly. But the music timing of this movie is extremely strong. It stands out, especially I guess if you're focusing on it, it stands out. But I really enjoyed it. I had a blast. I'm happy I keep kind of going back to it, and I can easily say, like without a shadow of a doubt, that 2 years later, watching it now, and I'm trying to remember, like it's either my 4th time watching it or my 5th time. I'm not, some of you guys have watched these movies like 50 to 80 times. I've only seen them, I haven't seen any of them 10 times or more. I think maybe the most is maybe like 6, 7, 8 times for these films. But for 5 specifically, it's either 4 or 5 times. Each time does get, like legitimately, it gets better. I enjoy it more than I did, even though at the time, I was so like amped up, and I was like shaking in my movie theater, seat. I was so like just all this excitement from the lead up, because the lead up to Scream 5 was also epic, right? And then watching it, I was like, oh my God, I would say the feeling I felt when I watched it that day cannot be replicated. And I don't know if I like it more now than literally that day. But once I saw it that day, And then we started analyzing it and talking about it and just thinking on it the next couple days. It dropped pretty quick, I'd say, within like the first 6 months of its. So I'm talking about that. I like it way, way, way more now than I did kind of at its low, like 3, 4, 5 months after the movie came out. But when the movie did come out, that night, the night before, I guess, sitting in the theater, I was like, oh my, like, we're here. And that was the first new Scream movie I'd ever seen in theaters, second ever, because I saw Scream 1 for the 25th anniversary. It was a special moment. I try to always say that, like, it's a special franchise. Like, us talking and theorizing and all the stuff we did leading into Scream 5, that's a big part of it that I'll never forget. I don't know if you can say that helps the movie itself, because when you're watching it, you know, you're just watching it. You're not thinking about, oh, remember those live streams we did and all those fun theory videos. That was part of the experience of Scream 5, but it wasn't the actual, you know, like, movie itself. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm going to do the same thing for Scream 6. Once we get closer to its 1-year birthday, I'm going to do a live stream on it, and I'm going to do a, you know, 1-year review video on it. So hopefully you guys will check those out as well. Thank you for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.